Can you really release emotions from the body? I think a better question is actually, what do we mean by saying we're releasing emotions from the body? Let's try to understand what we're actually asking or what we're actually seeking when we try to do that. I think what we're actually looking for is how to release ourselves from the grips that certain traumatic events had on us. How do we know that there are emotions to release in the first place? Maybe there are, right? I think it's useful to adopt an attitude of assuming nothing and being open to anything, being open to what our bodies have to show us, being open to what our feelings have to tell us or inform us about what there is to feel here that we maybe haven't felt. So if we're really talking about releasing trauma from the body, to me that's a more broad and deep topic than simply talking about releasing emotions from the body. And it's really important to actually understand what trauma even means, how it maybe gets locked or stuck in our body, so that when we go towards our body, when we turn towards our body or attempt to use body work or fascia release or yoga or any type of body-based experience to release emotions, we actually have the right context and the right frame of mind going into it so that we know what to expect and we can do it purposefully. So before I dive into releasing trauma or accessing those memories in the body, I want to just define things really quick. So my definition of trauma is any event in our life that felt too painful to be with, to be present for, and we kind of dissociated. We cut ourselves off from that experience because it felt too overwhelming or too much, or maybe, if we were a child, it wasn't appropriate for us to make, life and death decisions, and we cut ourselves off from that experience. Our body took over, and we created a disconnect, basically, from what happened. And maybe we made some stories up about it to get through it. But we have the imprint on our nervous systems of what happened. We have the imprint of the survival strategies we used. Our fascia holds memory. Our fascia holds the memory of how we survived those experiences, as well as the behaviors we typically are going to adopt when anything in life feels confronting later on, like in adulthood. All of these are accessible to us in our bodies, and I call these things nervous system patterns. And in my experience, we can have nervous system patterns running us in the background as survival biology, as the programs or neural loops, if you want to call them that, the neural pathways that dictate a lot of our thinking, our feeling, and our everyday behaviors. But especially when anything confronting or triggering happens, we usually have a go-to strategy that's a cascade of thoughts, feelings, and then actions that we take to survive that triggering experience. So these can exist completely separate from any emotion that maybe we didn't allow ourselves to feel at the time or currently in our life. We can actually, in my experience, have completely processed our emotions around traumatic events that happen in our life, but actually still be governed by these survival patterns that live in our fascia and our nervous systems. I've been working with people in pain through fascia release since 2008. I step on people doing this, so I've gotten to feel a lot of different reactivities in people's nervous systems when I step on them. I've gotten to feel a lot of different textures in people's fascia. And we all have different reactivity patterns and different textures in our fascia. And I've been able to map these to certain survival strategies or nervous system patterns, as well as kind of patterned traumatic events. And it's really pretty fascinating. But one of the things you'll want to seek to understand if you're going to go into your body to really try to release what's there, right? Whether it is a memory or emotion or a nervous system pattern or just the traumatic memory, it's imprinted there in texture and tone on your fascia. And when you contact that system again, it could be re-triggering that. So it's important to actually think about this. Whatever event you maybe went through that was so painful you had to cut yourself off from it and either hide part of your psyche away or dissociate, or just, not feel it. Whatever you were doing at the time is going to be imprinted there and then recreated later. So it could be things like maybe you braced your whole body, maybe you clenched your jaw really tight, maybe you verbalized something out loud, maybe you were squirmy and you were squirming, maybe you actually tried to run away through that event. Maybe you hid yourself deep inside your body, you just retreated inside and got really quiet. So there are many of these strategies that we can take, and those may actually come rising to the surface when you contact your body. So what I want to actually share right now are 4 of the ways that I have experienced releasing emotions through my body. And I put it in quotations here because you'll see what I mean. It's not exactly releasing emotions. I'm going to give you 4 different ways that have consistently, 4 different things that have consistently happened for me when I've approached my body, whether it's on my own or with someone else helping me, working with me on my body. So in my traumatic history, I had a tendency to hide inside. I retreated deep inside my own body where I felt safe. I didn't dissociate and leave my body most of the time. I hid inside. So when I'm contacting my body now as the conscious adult that I am, taking accountability for my healing, I want to find myself. I want to rescue myself. I want to actually pull out and, make a safe space for that part of me that felt like she had to hide. So when that part of me actually is contacted, the primary emotions that arise in me are actually gratitude, relief. Relief, I think, can feel like an emotion in a healthy sense here. It's not pain relief per se, it's relief, like, oh my God, I finally found her. Or, oh my God, someone finally found me. So it's gratitude, relief, and maybe sadness sometimes combined with that I had to be in hiding for so long. So this is something that I'm still finding in my body. It's still something that happens to me, even though I'm aware of it. It's that when traumatic or, painful things are happening in my life, there's a tendency to retreat inward, and I'm working on not doing that and drawing myself out and interrupting basically that pattern. But a lot of the time when working on my body, I'll just let myself feel the gratitude and the relief. It just feels actually so good to have that part of me contacted. And then at the same time, my adult brain now actually feels, or my adult self, my adult heart feels some sadness that those things happened to me to the extent that I'm still in hiding sometimes at 40 years old. So the reason I'm sharing this is that those emotions, aren't necessarily stuck in my body. I'm simply allowing myself to feel any emotions that I feel as the adult now, right? As the adult doing the work. Like, oh my God, there I am. It feels like such a relief to finally contact that part of me. Now, the second thing that consistently happens for me when I go to my body and work with my fascia and my nervous system is that I'll notice reactivity that mirrors and matches the reactivity that I adopted to survive some really violent things that happened to me in my childhood. Violent things and also non-violent things, things that weren't a violation per se, but something like abandonment. So both have happened in my past, and I'll notice myself, maybe holding my breath and just kind of bracing myself, or having a little bit of resistance to the sensations that are happening when I'm on a certain body part or doing fascia release. If I'm getting a massage from somebody and I notice that I don't feel like they're tuning into me, then that's going to create a triggering event for me where I don't feel seen, or I feel like they're not paying attention to me. I'm abandoned again. Nobody sees my needs. And so then I might start retreating inward, like I just talked about. And so this is, either an amazing opportunity to acknowledge the reactivity that's there, choose a different strategy now that I'm a conscious adult, or if I'm unconscious of all that, if I don't know any better, if I don't have the awareness that I'm getting re-triggered into a trauma response in the present, which is going to further ingrain the pattern, by the way. If I'm unaware of that, then I'm going to get re-traumatized. And that pattern is now going to be grooved in even further. That neural loop will be even more kind of imprinted on my body as the go-to strategy when I don't feel safe. So for me, because I am conscious that this is happening, at least when I'm working with myself or working with somebody that I can be vocal with or that I can, share what's happening with, for me, what usually happens is a lot of self-compassion, acknowledgement of that pattern, some breathing, and actually allowing the pattern to be okay. I don't actually shut it off. I don't resist the resistance. I just notice, I'm holding my breath. Okay. And as soon as I actually notice it and acknowledge it, I actually tend to then breathe. As soon as I acknowledge the resistance, I tend to it melts a little bit, right? Just acknowledging it and not trying to push it away is a pretty amazing thing. And then I have a lot of compassion for myself, and I have a lot of self-love that comes up around, oh my gosh, I'm still enacting these patterns, which means they're so deeply ingrained, and I went through some pretty painful things that just really imprinted on me. I want to say that this may not be a natural response for everybody. It might feel really frustrating to get re-triggered like that, or re-traumatized sometimes. If you know how to work with it, it can be an amazing opportunity instead of maybe just ingraining that pattern further. But the reason this feels so important is that if you don't understand that this can happen when you go to your body to release emotions or work with your trauma, then you could do more harm than good. And I don't want to be a fear monger in any way whatsoever. I think we're all pretty good at taking care of ourselves for the most part in terms of self-protection and whatnot, but awareness is magical. Awareness here can do wonders. So being aware of this can help you actually orient to what's happening and rewire instead of ingraining that pattern further. And moving on to number 3, sometimes I just spontaneously cry. I've had a lot of clients of mine spontaneously cry. They don't know why. It's just happening. And the best thing to do in this situation is to simply let it be and to not try to make up a story about it, and to actually follow your body's clues of how it wants to cry. Because sometimes we can get in our head about it, and if anyone's present, we might be embarrassed or we might think it's silly to be crying for no reason. But if we can create an attitude of simply letting what is in this moment be and just cry the way our bodies want us to, something moves through. And so this is a mystery. Is it a memory getting released? Is it a trapped emotion just coming out? I don't know. Does it really matter, right? I don't know that it does. I think the important thing is that we simply let it happen. And any resistance to letting it happen can create then another trauma response, right? If it feels too painful in that moment to allow yourself to spontaneously cry and you interrupt that process, then that itself can be another layer of trauma. So the best thing to do is really surrender to it and get out of here and just let it happen. All right, and finally, number 4, sometimes contacting my body will bring up a very specific memory that maybe I haven't had in a long time. Maybe I haven't actually thought of this experience since it happened, right? Or maybe it's just been years and years or decades. And so what usually happens for me in this moment is I'm aware that this can happen and I've trained myself for this. And so again, I just let it happen. So the memory is happening and sometimes the emotions arise with it that perhaps we could assume were the emotions I didn't actually allow myself to experience at the time. But in either case, it's a memory, a very specific memory that produces certain emotions, and it might be sadness, it might be grief, it might be anger, it might be confusion. I don't know what it is for you. My typical emotions that I almost always feel are some spectrum, somewhere on the spectrum of sadness. So it could be grief or sorrow or just heartbreak, right? Or anger. So usually it's in one of those camps for me. But whatever it is that's coming up for you, just letting it flow through you and move through you is the best way to heal. It's the corniest saying, but it is true that you have to feel it to heal it. So can we actually release emotions from the body? I guess I would say that my answer is yes. However, I think a better way to actually look at that is that the body is an amazing place to go to find answers, to be curious, to get data, it's like knocking on a door to your own memory bank, to your own sense of self and what has happened to you in life, and allowing whoever answers that door to be an important messenger for you. But it's not always about releasing the emotions that got trapped there when you were a kid. Sometimes it's about allowing your adult self to feel emotions in relation to your child self. Sometimes it's both at the same time, which we've been told are impossible, but I think that's BS. I think we can feel multiple different emotions kind of all at the same time. So you might actually be feeling the emotions of a small child while at the same time maintaining a state of being, an emotional state of being of an adult who can be there for that kid now when no one was at the time. Maybe it's being re-triggered and then learning how to work with those patterns to rewire them instead of repeating them every time you're triggered. There's a lot of opportunity for self-awareness, for self-discovery, and getting to know how these things impact your body, and then how your body in turn impacts you. So I would say that the practice really that I would recommend is one of using fascia release or body work or whatever your practice is to get to know yourself, to get to know what's here, to get to know your nervous system, to get to know your reactivity patterns, to get to know what does happen for you when you're re-triggered and what's possible for you to do now. How much choice do you have, right? Use it as a self-awareness practice and really incredible things can happen. And in closing, I want to leave you with this little seed that I like to plant, which is that approaching the body, or really anyone and anything in life, with curiosity instead of a demand for change is the best way to get a good response. So curiosity is your best superpower for learning how your body can help you uncover those memories, unlock the pain that's there, and actually move into freedom now as an adult. If this conversation is something you want to take further with me, I have a workshop right now that's currently about to go live any moment, depending on when you watch this video. The very first day of the workshop is April 27th. This workshop is called Unlocking the Trauma Body. And I want to help you discover how your body locks you in these pain and trauma patterns, but then how you can work with your body to break free in ways that include, but are not limited to, what we've been talking about today. So I'm very excited. This is a brand new arena for me, even though I've been doing this work with my private practice clients and with myself for a really long time. So I'd love for you to join, and we'll leave the registration link in the description box below this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.